maybe kind of some of what you feel you have accomplished and why you decided to run again.
Sure. Happy to do it. Thanks for the opportunity to come speak today. Of course, I'm running for re-election to the State Senate. I've been in the legislature. This will be my 20th year. I was first elected in 1990. I think there's a kind of an anti-incumbent feeling out there with nationwide, but I think I can make a pretty good case for my abilities and how I represent my constituents. A little background: I was born in the district in Shelton. We live on Hood Canal, and I manage a tree farm. We have a timber farm, and we raise obviously large logs and sawmill operation. We don't have a sawmill, but we sell our logs to primarily here domestically. We sell some gravel too, and some oysters. So we have a family business there for a long time. And when I was first elected to the House, I think that I was effective in representing my constituents, and moved on to the Senate in 1997. And of the 20 years I've been in Olympia, I've spent one night there. And I'm only about 45 minutes away. And when I first started, we had our daughter was 6, and my deal with my wife was that if I could come home every night, it was going to work. So Olympia is a part-time job, a citizen legislature, as we say in our Constitution. So I've enjoyed the mix of work outside Olympia and going in the winter primarily, and representing the voters and the citizens of the 35th District. Of course, the 35th is all of Mason County, part of Kitsap, part of Thurston, and part of Grace Harbor. I don't have any real large cities. I have a portion of Bremerton, but it's primarily a rural district, a lot of smaller cities, of course, communities. I try very hard, and I brought a few with me, to send out a newsletter every year, and I start with usually with a survey at the beginning of the term, asking people what they think about some of the big issues that I know are going to come up, and then I follow that up at the end of the year with a newsletter which this is an example of this from the last legislative session, that I write myself. Staff doesn't write it for me. I try to go through the session. I keep a little list on my desk of what I think the bigger bills are, and I report back to my constituents and tell them exactly how I voted. And many people like that. They say, I don't agree with every vote you took, but at least you told us how you voted, and I think that's very important. As you probably know, I'm also a Mason County Commissioner. I've done that for 6 years. I have 2 years to go on my present term. I won't be running again. I think someone else can step forward after 8 years, and it's worked pretty well, though. I'm only 25 minutes from Olympia when I'm in Shelton, and I did not miss any votes in Olympia this last year. So I've kind of got my schedule down pretty well. I'm routine oriented, so I can make the county commission meetings and also the state senate. It has been I think a help in my caucus and the Democratic caucus when the doors closed to talk a little bit about local government issues, and impress on my colleagues how important it is that we not just pass on the mandates to local government, which is also struggling today, especially with criminal justice issues. Local governments will spend nearly 70%, even 75% on criminal justice. If you look at the courts, the jails, the deputy sheriffs, district court, as well as Superior. So it's real important to me that I bring that perspective to Olympia. I think that helps. I'm also, as I say, a small business person, so I try very hard to look at their issues. I'm endorsed by the National Federation of Independent Business. I've got a 95% voting record with those small business people. Also endorsed by the Washington State Patrol Troopers Association, Washington Police and Sheriffs. They've got 5,000 members across the state, so a lot of those major endorsements, and also the public school employees, which are not the teachers, but the bus drivers, cafeteria workers, janitors, the hands-on people.
You have a mix of kind of characteristics that I think people would call conservative, but you still always run as a Democrat. Can you
Yes.
describe How do you describe your politics?
Well, I think that it's constituent driven. You know, when I first got interested in politics, I was in student government. I was very interested in John F. Kennedy. I thought he was the master politician and, of course, the youngest president. My parents were very strong Republicans, but that's why I felt strongly that I would, if I ever ran for office, I'd run as a Republican. I went to a national convention back in Atlantic City when Lyndon Johnson was not going to run again, and so I've been involved in it for quite a while. A lot of people say, "Well, Sheldon, you're not a Democrat." I like to say that neither one of the political parties has a monopoly on all the good ideas, and I think citizens are looking for someone who represents them and not just the party. I can tell you in Olympia how many times I'm frustrated when I'm sitting at on the floor of the Senate or in the House, and a bill comes up that's not very noticeable, it doesn't have a lot of debate, and members will turn to each other and say, "What are we on that?" And in other words, how do we vote? And I very rarely commit to how I'm going to vote before the vote is actually taken, because you learn so much from the debate, and you get a feel for the ramifications of the bill and the importance of the bill. So while many members always have the whip, they'll come over and say, "How are you going to vote on that?" They'll count you. I always tell them they know they're not going to count me, because I think it's important to me to listen to the whole debate and not commit before there's time to vote.
Do you see that changing at all in your caucus? And we don't know what's going to happen in November, but the odds are that there will be more Republicans down in the Senate, at least
Right.
in some measure. Do you see Democrats kind of changing? Because I think you're right. People,
I think they will.
Is it anti?
Yeah, I think they will. I think that it'll be more balanced. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that in the Senate the Democrats will lose several seats, and maybe even 4 or 5, or even more. This is such an unusual year. I think there's no year like this. The national politics are so strong. Cable TV, the primary election results were, have challengers ahead in a lot of races. I don't think that's going to change much in just 45 days or so. So, but will my party, the Democrats, change much? I think they will. I think they'll have to. I think they will now have to engage the other party in real tough decisions and negotiations about the budget.
And how do you plan to involve yourself that way? How
Well,
are you going to be a leader?
I think I have been a leader in representing my constituents, and I've often been criticized because I'm not a party regular or a straight line party vote, and I think that's an advantage I have. I think my constituents like that, and it's hard to be elected now and to have that position, because we've become so partisan in Olympia that I'm probably fortunate that I can do that. That I've often stood up on the floor, not only voted against something like the overturning of Initiative 960 or some of the new taxes that were imposed. I've often stood up and said, well, from this side of the aisle, I just want to say that I don't agree with this philosophy. I have not agreed, for example, with raising taxes during a recession. I don't think President Kennedy raised taxes during a recession. I think that was a hallmark of one of things that he did in his administration, and I don't think anyone denies that John F. Kennedy was a Democrat.
You do have in here a mix of cuts and new revenues is how you see getting out of the kind of budget crunch that's probably coming next year.
Well,
explain kind of what you're...
Yeah, in that survey, I've asked the people that a proportion of the people did say they see it as a mix of new revenues and cuts. I think when we get to Olympia that, it's easy to say, well, we'll cut the horse racing commission or we'll cut some obscure expenditure. That just won't get us to $3 billion. And I think we need to seriously consolidate some of our state agencies. For example, the Department of Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife, state parks, they all have their own personnel departments, their own law enforcement headquarters people. I think that's a natural. Information services, for example, as you come into the Capitol campus, huge new building is going up. It's about, well, at least twice what the public sector or private sector would pay for a building of its size. It is a function, information services, the computer side of Olympia, that I think much of that could be contracted out to the private sector, and we would be better off for it.
Is it too late?
Well, no, it's not too late. That building.
Spent the money on the
well,
building.
The building's
Building's
going up,
yeah.
but I think we can sell some of the buildings we have. We have a huge amount of buildings in Olympia. I've worked real hard since 1998 to privatize the state liquor system, and that got a lot of press this last year. And finally, there's an initiative, two initiatives, in fact, to get us out of the liquor business. That will save us, contrary to what the liquor board says. This will save us hundreds of millions of dollars.
I wanted you to explain that, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the frustrations we actually had this on the board last year, is when it's come up
Mhm.
out of the legislature, they've never clearly explained what the costs and
Yeah.
and losses would be. And now we have these two conflicting studies. What's your understanding of the savings?
Well, I've spent a lot of time looking at it, and if you look at states that are control states, which we are, and non-control states, first of all, there's really no big difference in the amount of underage drinking or over-service and those kinds of issues when you privatize. That, I think, is off the table. But when you look at revenue, the state has the highest liquor taxes in the country, over $25 a gallon, compared to $3.20 a gallon in California. The initiatives don't really change. I think the taxes should stay the same. Local governments share in that revenue. But our state has this enormous liquor markup, and the legislature moved that from 46% to 53%. And that's just the margin that they assume and use for many of the operations which are superfluous to state government. For example, the liquor warehouse, all of us in this room, if we were importing liquor, we would have probably 3 or 4 warehouses. Almost all the liquor is distilled in the Midwest. You'd have a warehouse in Spokane, maybe one in Vancouver, Bellingham, and Seattle. But we have one in Seattle, so we bypass a lot of this population and then ship it back. It is tremendously inefficient. The liquor warehouse that the state owns can ship 15,000 cases a day. The warehouse that K&L Beverage has, the private sector in Seattle, which also supplies Alaska because they're a control state and don't have a distributorship in Anchorage, they can ship 60,000 cases a day with less people. The liquor board does not know how much each case weighs, even though they have a sophisticated system, they say, and when the barcodes come by, certainly the computers could scan that barcode and tell you that that is 35 pounds or 40 pounds or 50 pounds. So when you load the truck, you don't overload the truck and make it unsafe or underload it and not have an efficient load go out. Well, what they do is they just say, well, every case is 37 pounds average. That's business would not do that. Private business would not stand for that kind of inefficiency. And you have over 320 stores, 160 of them which are staffed by state employees that only sell one thing, liquor. When young people and others want to go into a store, they want to buy a bottle of tequila and buy a lime, or they want to buy some napkins, they want to buy what they need for the party.
Do you think there's any threat to small businesses, small stores that sell wood? Because, I mean, Costco's the big factor, and Walmart and the other ones. Will they have such monopoly because they can wholesale and discount all those? Are you worried at all about that?
No, I'm not. Under 1100, that initiative, anyone that's selling now will be able to get a license. So the small contract stores that are out in my area, in the rural areas, maybe you have one in Manchester that's a small contract store. They will continue. They can have licenses. But it's the liquor board's job. It's their job to protect us from the neon signs and from the street corner kind of operations, the stores that could go in next to a YMCA or a school. The liquor board, that's their job, is enforcement and regulation and taxation. But I think the small businesses will do well. They'll all pay B&O taxes. Costco will pay B&O. I think if you're a good, the other criticism, what'll happen to 1,100 state employees? Well, it's not a core function of government. And if you're a good liquor store manager in Bremerton, you'll be a great liquor store manager at the Bremerton Safeway if they sell. And I think the legislature and the governor have really missed the boat in not privatizing this liquor operation sooner, because it sends a message, and it's the most visible form that we can do of change, of reform in state government. But every year it seems to die, and now it's an initiative.
Do you know what the figures are, or what do you understand them to be, the personnel savings in not running those stores versus what, for example, I would imagine there's more liquor board employees.
Yes, quite a few. There's 1,100 store employees, and I'm not sure how many work at the distribution center, which are not included in the 1,100. And the liquor board itself is probably 100, 150 people. It's very frustrating. I talked to some people
And
today.
that would presumably grow because they would be responsible for further
I think
enforcement, or not?
they would be responsible for enforcement, for taxation and regulation.
I guess that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Do you feel that will need to grow at all?
I think that that the liquor board has to go back to full-time. The members, they've taken them to part-time now, but I think it should go back to being a full-time commission, and that they should concentrate on those areas. Right now, I've talked to small wineries. They're very, very frustrated. When you want to do something as a small winery or even a small distiller, which we have now in Washington State, and you go to the liquor board, unless it says exactly in the statute that you can do it, you're not allowed to do it. It's so prescriptive, and I think what's happened, they've just piled on regulations. And for example, some of these regulations, there's no rhyme or reason for it when you're a business person. Why you have to do it that way, and the agents will say, well, it's just because that it doesn't say in here that you can do that. And so I think we're going to realize more revenue when we privatize than we have now.
Through further sales.
Well, I think you're going to find more people in the business. I don't think that it's going to be a great boon to Costco or to Safeway. Costco got into this fight because they were rebuffed by the liquor board. They were just
You don't
told,
think it'll help
absolutely.
Costco's sales?
Oh yeah, it'll help. It'll help.
Seems like it'd
But
be
it's
great
not going to
for
be
them.
the massive liquor barn kind of operation. That's up to the liquor board on regulation and signage and those kinds of things.
They would not be able to control how much Costco is bringing in, or would they?
No,
Right.
they would not
Okay.
be able to.
Costco,
But
as much as they can sell, they can bring in the doors.
Yeah, but they have to pay all the taxes.
Right.
They can't sell below cost, and the initiatives all say that both of them, they can't sell below cost. So I think it's going to give more opportunity to the small business person.
Let's go to a different
Yeah.
one, since we're going to have those folks come talk too. What's the biggest thing pending for your district? What do you see as your number one priority, specific to that district, that you need in the next couple of years to really focus on and get some cooperation down in Olympia?
Well, I think it's jobs, the economy. I think that's absolutely the number one thing. We've got to help, state government has got to help us bring ourselves out of this recession. We've got to be more friendly when we get to regulations for any kind of projects that are going on. I've got so many projects that are stalled because of issues of multiple agencies. And in your paper here, I think it was today or yesterday, talking about the Seebeck Marina, for example. That's a project that's just been over-regulated unbelievably. Developers want to spend some money and they can't. They're afraid to spend the money. We have a large project in Shelton it's an energy project.
Biomass?
Yeah, biomass project. I hope that moves forward as well.
Are you a proponent of that?
Well, I am a proponent of biomass. I think it's a great technology, especially in our area. We have a tremendous amount of logging debris that is burned in the forest now that doesn't certainly deteriorate or is detrimental to air quality. And I think bringing it to a central spot and burning it with state-of-the-art regulations is going to help. The company is a partnership of Areva, which is a large French company, Duke. We know Duke is mostly a coal company in the east, and then John Deere, which has developed a fantastic machine to bundle this logging slash into a log. So it's a cylinder about as long as this table, 16 feet long, about 3.5 feet in diameter. And so one truck can come to the mountain and get a load of logs to go to the Welco mill in Shelton, and the next truck can grab a load of energy logs that goes to the energy plant. And it's these kind of new projects I think we have to look to, but also to help the individuals that are struggling out there with overregulation. And
where do you see growth possible in, especially like that Mason County area that you cover?
Well,
what types of industries, what types of businesses?
I think Belfair will become the Silverdale of Mason County. We're putting in a sewer right now. It's almost a $40 million project. That area is, of course, right next to Hood Canal. There's lots of used car lots and unused space that's not productive. I think that area will really grow in commercial development.
Do you think they need the bypass?
Yeah,
Okay.
we need a bypass bad. We don't need a monster project. We
Yeah.
don't need something designed by the engineers at DOT that is so far into the future that it's not doable. In Shelton, we've had a bypass since 1970, a 2-lane bypass around the town. It worked great. Something that's
Something like that.
simple, doable, and not in the $100 million range. I mean, it gets crazy to think how much money we could spend on it. but we don't need
What's the stall to getting back to that?
Well, you know, I
You
worked
have
real
to
hard.
convince
I worked,
the
yeah,
state.
yeah. I worked real hard on the transportation committee to get $15 million appropriated in 2005, and I thought that would possibly do the trick. But when the design started with DOT, they drove it up to almost $70 million with lots of connecting roads and roundabouts and 4-lane capability. Build 2 lanes at the time, but design it all for 4 lanes. Man, looking to the future is great, but you still need to accomplish something today.
If you call it, if you see Belfair as a Silverdale, is 2 lanes
Potential.
going to accommodate what that needs, or are we going to be talking about this in 8
Well,
years?
Well, we're doing a widening project that'll start in 2012 for Highway 3 through Belfair. That will help. But I think for the people that want to bypass Belfair altogether, the bypass at 2 lanes is going to be more than sufficient. And it is the #1 project for the Peninsula Regional Transportation Planning
Figure that
Organization.
bottleneck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Glenn, did you have any questions?
Hey, I just hope we fix the Johns Prairie.
Yeah, that's a second project at the Johns Prairie intersection on Highway 3.
Yeah. How do you stand on the L&I?
I think the legislature, again, has missed an opportunity to make some needed changes, and now the voters will have their say on the initiative. But I think we're only one of 3 states, or 3 or 4 in the country, that doesn't have private sector industrial insurance. By having something there, we're going to have some competition. We're going to have a natural push and pull, I think, that will help us to have a better system. Yeah.
Seems like a slam dunk to me.
Yeah. We should have done that in Olympia, to me.
And was that people in your party weren't in favor of it, or?
Yeah, I would say probably
Let's
primarily
call that.
people in the Democratic side, on the labor side, feel that this is kind of one of the third rails of politics is what they call 3-way insurance, but I think we have self-insurance on workman's comp for some of the larger companies, and we have our L&I system for the smaller companies. So the big companies get some relief and some these retro programs. They get back a little bit if they have a great safety record. And I just think competition is going to open it up for smaller companies to get some better rates. And this is such a growing cost for companies. it again is a business climate issue for new companies and companies that want to grow.
We're about covered.
Yeah, we are. I'm sorry. We have another group coming in to follow us. So
Sure.
that went a little quicker than it usually does.
Okay.
Okay.
But thanks very much.
Yeah.
We appreciate your time.
Yeah, sorry my opponent wasn't.
Yeah,
here.
no, I'm
It's
sorry we
more of
couldn't
a-
do that with both of you,
a
but
debate, but
we're glad that you
we'll
could
look
come.
forward to the election season here.
Yeah.
It's on us.
Yeah, what we do is we pay attention to this, and then any other kind of forums that you have, we try to watch, or any issues
Okay.
that come up, and then do a recommendation later in the year.
Good deal. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank
Bet.
you.
Thank you.
Very interesting.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Nice to see you.
Nice seeing you.
All
I
right.
wish you were in my district.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Your term on the Mason County Commissioners ends at the end of this year?
2 years.
2 years, okay.
Yeah, and I won't run again. Like I say, I've enjoyed it, but